Hi there, and welcome back to Riella's Army of Dolls, where I talk all things fashion doll. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, then please do that to make sure you don't miss any more of my fantastic doll content. Now, if you have been watching my channel for a little while, you will know that I am absolutely obsessed by 16-inch fashion dolls. And unfortunately, there just aren't that many of them being made these days. And it makes it all the more exciting when a new one comes out. So the doll I've just got hold of is a new Robert Tonner doll. She is a Lacie Churchill who is exclusive to Cherished Friends doll store online. There were 3 of these dolls available. One of them, my favourite, who is Bold Statement, has already sold out. She was $265 and I do have one of those. There's also another dressed doll called Stargazing who is still available for $235. And there is a basic Lacie as well, and I have one of those too to show today, and she is still available for $150. So I definitely want to discover and share these new dolls, but my real goal for today is to do a bit of a comparison between Lacie, who has the new body from Robert Tonner, which is dubbed the rtb102 body, and also with Grace, who is the exclusive doll for the Virtual Doll Convention, or VDC, and who comes with the rtb101, the previous model of body. And a lot of people have been asking online, well, what are the differences between 101 and 102? So I'm going to compare those bodies, and I'm also going to compare them with the Tyler body, which is the most common that you're going to find with secondhand dolls out there. This Lacie Churchill release has a new sculpt. It is obviously similar to the Lacie Churchill who came out in previous releases, but there have been changes. You can see that she has very large, sultry lips and quite a relaxed, sweet expression. Although her story says that she is the CEO of a film studio, with this face, I could see her having been cast as the film star. It is an incredibly beautiful face. I'm not quite sure which one of these Lacies I like the face of best, perhaps the basic in fact. The basic doll comes with a wig, whereas both of the other releases have rooted hair. Generally, I do prefer rooted hair, but I have to say that these wigs have come really beautifully styled. They don't really feel like you need to do anything. They've come straight out of the box looking lovely. The dolls come with different clothing based on their release. So obviously this one, as the basic, she just has underwear and some sandals. And like with the Graces who come from VDC, I really don't find myself liking these sandals. They are not a good fit. They are hard to keep on and they don't shape very well to the foot. I do find that disappointing with the current Robert Tonner releases. The gold dress is absolutely stunning. It is a fabric that is going to pull really, really easily. It already has a few little tweaks in it, even though it is brand new. The back, I was not expecting this tie back open. It is really stunning, and I think that that is an unexpected and beautiful feature. The clothing and accessories that the dolls come with is of a similar level to other Tonner releases, and in particular to the Grace dolls. This is Showtime Grace from the VDC. She is a rooted hair doll, and this is her original dress. And I think it is stunning in a similar way to Lacie's dress, although perhaps not quite as detailed. Along with the new Lacies and with Grace, I also have the Lacie Churchill released last year for the Metro Dolls Convention, who has the previous Lacie Churchill sculpt. And looking at them together, you can see that the older Lacie sculpt has a slightly longer face, less rounded. I find that it has harsher lines. This doll looks softer and gentler. She has a sweeter face. The previous Lacie looks a bit more haughty. I do really like both of them, and I have to say that I love the Metro Dolls outfit, but that I do prefer the new Lacie sculpt. And of course, the other doll to compare these ladies with is the Tyler Wentworth doll. She was the most common release and is still the easiest to find by the Robert Tonner Company. Basically, every doll up until about 2018 was made with this body. And then we saw the RTB 101 introduced. Both of these ladies are called Lacie Churchill, but the differences in terms of their faces are quite apparent. Obviously, the face painting style is different, but the shape of the eyes, even the point of the nose, looks quite different on both dolls, as well as the rounding of the mouth. I'm sure that part of this is to do with the painting, but you can see that the sculpt looks a little bit different. The bodies, however, between the two dolls, I am not able to perceive a difference in them. I know that both dolls are referred to as the rtb102 body, and visually they look identical. Both dolls have joints at the ankle and the knees, as well as, of course, the hips, wrists, elbows, and necks. Their backs are marked with Robert Tonner, copyright 2022. Both have the identical marking on the back. There is some slight colour differences to them. This could be chance. I have already done a comparison video looking very comprehensively at the different varieties of Robert Tonner bodies that have been released. So please click on the link if you haven't seen that video. Today, because the rtb102 body is new, that's the body I'm focusing on, and I wanted to compare her with the rtb101 because she has the most similarities, and I know people are interested to know what differences they have, as well as the Tyler Wentworth body because it is the most common. Now, the differences between Tyler Wentworth and the other two are the most strikingly obvious. So first of all, she has different joints. She's the only one who doesn't have an ankle joint. You can also see that she is significantly shorter. Her feet are sitting a little bit higher and her shoulders are also sitting a little bit lower. Her knee joint, the type of jointing is actually quite different. She has a thigh joint, but she has no joint here at the waist. Her joint instead is higher up, sitting at the actual waistline, and it is a line, whereas these two have the panty joint. Tyler has a joint below her bust, as does Grace on the 101, but Lacie on the 102 body does not have that joint. The remaining joints are more or less the same. Tyler has a much more pointed bust, whereas the other two have this much more realistic, almost drooping look to their bust, which really strikes me as how, a real woman would look here, whereas Tyler looks more like she's had some plastic surgery and hers are really pointed out. In clothes, you won't notice that as much, but the other two you can see have a much more realistic sculpting. I can see why Robert Tonner has done away with the upper joint, the below the bust joint, because realistically, the amount of movement that offers is not significant. Particularly on the Tyler body, you can see that she can only really move a tiny bit to the side. Grace on the 101 can do quite a bit more, and this does allow her to take on some quite realistic seated, hunching poses that Lacie will not be able to do. That said, it doesn't give a significant range of movement. The waist joint on Tyler really just allows her to do this basic turn. It's quite an unnatural type of pose. So the underpant joint, as I like to call it, allows Grace and Lacie to again make this sort of hunching pose that provides a very realistic human form. Lacie's underpant joint, however, has a significantly lesser range of motion to Grace's. I'm not sure why this change has happened, but honestly, she doesn't have much motion at all within her torso, whereas Grace on the rtb101 body has a significant range. You can see both of them here doing a side lean. This is honestly nearly as much as I can make Lacie do. Aesthetically, we can see that the rtb101 and 102 body have a lot of similarities, whereas the Tyler body has very few similarities to the other two. It's clearly an entirely different sculpt, although it is going for some of the same ideas. So essentially focus on realism and posing. Every individual piece is different and looks different. This body is made to show off clothing, whereas the rtb101 and 102 bodies are to look beautiful in themselves. Biggest similarity, in fact, you can see is the faces. The Grace sculpt on the RTB101 body is a remake of the Sydney sculpt that was used for a long time in the Tyler Wentworth line. The neck is sculpted more finely and with more detail. The bust shape is very different. The arms look more muscly and more shapely on the RTB101 body. The waist is higher up in a more realistic human position. The hips are wider and have a more firm shape to them. And of course, we have that underwear piece that gives it a feel almost like flesh down there. The hands are larger and more defined. The legs also have a lot more definition and shape to them. They are also significantly larger. The knee joints are more hidden. They turn differently as well. And we have ankle joints as well as larger, more realistic feet. Somewhat surprisingly, although the joints have been upgraded, the posing capability of these dolls is extremely close. You can see the arms fully bent here. That is the maximum posing each one does in the elbow and the wrist. The RTB101 body looks like it may have bent just slightly more, particularly in the wrist, but actually it is extremely close. The shoulder joint also functions near on identically. Likewise, the knee joint, really there isn't a significantly larger range of motion on the RTB101 body. It is nearly identical. The biggest difference is that this knee can turn somewhat to the side, so it has a slightly ball jointed feel, whereas the Tyler Wentworth body bends in only one direction. The ankle joint is actually a real annoyance for me in the RTB101 bodies. Tyler obviously doesn't have this, and you might see it as an upgrade, but the range of motion that this joint gives is very small. She can't remove her feet and replace them with flat feet, which I think is unfortunate, and what I often find in shipping is that the ankle itself becomes weak and starts to crack. I have even had these dolls arrive with broken ankles before. So to be honest, I would actually prefer the dolls to not have an ankle joint or to have feet that could be removed. The differences between the two recent bodies are less obvious. Now, the RTB101 body is marked as 2017, and most Tonna dolls released between 2017 and 2022 have had this body. We are still seeing releases of the Grace doll with this body. It has not been retired. However, we also have this new body, which is marked 2022, which is primarily been used for the Lacie Churchill doll so far. Aesthetically, these dolls look pretty close, except for, of course, the torso. We can see difference in the jointing. The range of movement is different. The waist is different. Lacie has a much skinnier waist. She's more glamorous. To me, this feels almost like a cross between Grace's body and the Jean Marshall body with that hourglass figure idea. They both have the rubbery underwear piece, which I know many collectors do find frustrating because it makes dressing these dolls a little bit difficult. When we look down at the legs, there are no apparent differences. These look to be the identical sculpt, and that includes the feet and that ankle joint. And as I mentioned, there is often a little bit of cracking. I can already see some stress around the ankles of these dolls. The range of motion is identical, of course. And when we get to the arms, that's where, although it is not quite as obvious, we do start to see some other differences. When I was comparing these dolls, it started to become obvious that Grace has a more muscly arm than Lacie, and with that I realized that the upper arm is a new sculpt on the RTB102 body. Measuring them, her upper arm is about 5mm or half a centimetre shorter than Grace's, and you can see that it also has a little bit less definition around the muscle. I think that this gives her a more glamorous feel, whereas Grace has a slightly more realistic feel to it. So again, this links in with Lacie's torso, that she's more like a model. She has the beauty factor, whereas Grace is going for the idea of being as natural as she possibly can. The lower arms do appear identical in measurement and sight. I cannot 100% guarantee that, but they look the same. The hands as well appear to be the same sculpt, and the hand is a very nice sculpt with a lot of detail to it. We can see that it has some definition below the fingers as well as the fingers themselves. Interestingly, the other difference between these two dolls and the Tyler Wentworth doll is that the hands can be removed and pull out of their joint, but so can the upper arms. And I guess this is good when you are dressing the doll to allow you to very easily put tight clothing onto her. When I fully bend the doll's arms, I do actually see a slightly greater range of motion in the elbow joint of the new Lacie doll. This could be because of the slight alteration to the upper arm. Beyond that, I would overall say that Lacie has a slightly lesser range of motion than Grace, and so which one of these bodies you prefer is really going to come down to the way you play with your dolls and the aesthetic you're going for. Grace will pose, other than her arms, just slightly better. She does allow that motion across her torso, which will give you some realistic seated and leaning poses, whereas Lacie is potentially going to show off her outfits in a slightly more aesthetically pleasing way, while still giving a really good range of motion with her posing. It is such a joy to finally have some more 16-inch dolls coming out. Some of these dolls have been retired for a long time, and seeing them come back is fabulous. So I've just loved being able to open up the Lacies and enjoy them, and also the Grace dolls from VDC who've been coming out for a little while now. It is so fabulous to have 16-inch dolls to open up. When it comes to the bodies, honestly, it's so hard to choose between them. The 102 body on Lacie just looks so fabulous in her underwear like that. It really shows off the curves. She looks glorious. But the Grace doll has this sort of perfect symmetry to it, you know, this realism that really makes you just love all the little details that makes her look human and makes her take on those poses like seated and hunching that so few fashion dolls are able to do. So in terms of choosing between them, I don't think I could, but for collectors, I think it's going to come down to whether you enjoy posing your doll more or whether you enjoy dressing her more in clothing. I do think that Grace in the 101 has it just a tiny bit over Lacie in the 102 for posing, just because her torso is a little bit more capable of taking on a variety of poses. Although that said, Lacie's arms I do think just have a slightly bit more flex in them than Grace's. But Lacie, because of her beautiful hourglass figure, she does look amazing in clothing. So in terms of dressing your doll, I think that Lacie has it just a tiny bit over Grace, but choosing between them so hard. And you know what, that brings me to my last point. Actually, it is the perfection of these dolls that I am finding the most difficult, because I was actually planning, when I bought them, I was planning to keep Bold Statement and probably to sell Basic Lacie. But now that I look at them, oh my God, I can't choose. I think Bold Statement, she has the gown, she has the cool hairstyle, and you know, that glamour makeup. But the Basic Lacie, she has this perfection to her. She looks more real, she looks more dainty, and I just love her face. Somehow it's sweet, it's innocent, it's beautiful. How could I possibly choose between them? So if you know which one you would choose, please let me know. Maybe you'll make my decision a little bit easier. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming doll videos.